Hello and welcome to Strange Stories. It's great to have you here. We are all about sharing stories of near-death experiences from around the world in the hopes of bringing some light and inspiration to your day. Our daily videos offer a glimpse into what lies beyond this life, and we believe that they can help us all appreciate the gift of life a little bit more. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest videos. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue to grow. And to our returning viewers, welcome back. We're thrilled to have you with us again. So go ahead, grab a cozy blanket, get comfy, and join us for today's incredible near-death experience story.
My family and I were driving to Galveston for a day at the beach when we had a major accident about halfway there when I was 10 years old. Another vehicle had stopped in the middle of the road with no warning signs displayed. I was unconscious and bleeding profusely when an ambulance arrived. My two front teeth were completely knocked out. I was in a coma in a room by myself at the hospital, and they said my chances of survival were slim. During my coma, I recall seeing a long tunnel-like hallway with a very bright light glowing at the end. Because I couldn't look directly at the glowing light, I was holding my right hand above my head, almost over my eyes. Then seemingly out of nowhere, I heard a young lady say, "Andrew, I'm your guardian angel, and that is you down there." We were both staring at me as I lay on the bed in the hospital room. She went on to say, "We're not yet prepared for you. You're welcome to return." "I'd like to return," I said, smiling as I looked at her. I returned right away. Because I was recovering, the hospital staff was all taken aback. I remember what I was dreaming while in a coma to this day. This was more than 50 years ago. Then, on a dark and starry night in 1973, when I was 17, I was outside laying back on the hood and front windshield of my car. I was staring at the many stars for some unknown reason. A bright white light appeared out of nowhere and traveled straight for about 4 inches before stopping. The bright object then moved straight upward for about 2 inches before stopping. The object then moved backwards in the opposite direction of its first 4-inch movement and came to a halt. The object then moved at a 45-degree angle before quickly disappearing to the right. I was stunned and unable to move for a few moments after witnessing that. I'm not sure how to explain it, but after that, I can see things before they happen. I'll never forget when I was sleeping and had an incredible dream about a fire at a house in which someone died. A fire truck and 2 ambulances were dispatched to the house. That street was called John. I remembered that dream when I awoke. At the time, I thought the dream was strange. I was driving to my grandmother's house not long after that, on the same day. While stopped at the stop sign before crossing a main street, I looked to my left and saw John Street. A house on fire appeared midway down the cul-de-sac. In front of that house, a large fire truck and 2 ambulances were parked. The medics were leading a stretcher with a body on top out the front door of the house. I froze once more when I saw that. I couldn't stop staring with an unbelievable wow on my face. Something compelled me to pick up a pen and some blank paper in the mid-1980s. I began to jot down notes about extraterrestrials, which evolved into a story. Eventually, something compelled me to call and speak with an exobiologist at NASA's Johnson Space Center near League City, Texas, just outside of Houston. I talked to him on the phone about what I was writing, what was motivating me to write about the subject, and so on for quite some time, several times a week. He summoned me to his office several times. Then we can talk about it in person while drinking coffee and eating pastries. I kept refusing, but eventually I went to see him in person to discuss things. I parked in front of the information or admissions building. I walked in and told a lady behind the counter that I'd been asked to come to his office by a certain exobiologist at the Johnson Space Center to discuss my writings further. She looked at me puzzled. I gave her the exobiologist's name, building, room number, and phone number. She asked me to take a seat and said she'd be right back. She asked me to follow her a few minutes later. She led me down a long corridor the length of a football field to the very last room. Inside, there was an office desk with 2 chairs across from it. She returned about 15 minutes later with a large stack of papers and several pencils with unused erasers attached. She instructed me to fill out all of the forms and leave nothing blank. Those papers asked me everything: my name, age, current and many previous addresses, about my education, where I was currently working, about my other jobs, who I wanted to visit or see, why, what the reason for the visit was, and much more. When I was finished, she returned to collect the completed papers. She stated that she would return. She returned about 30 minutes later with several 5-inch by 7-inch cards and a small box with a lid. She instructed me to completely fill out each card. She opened the box, which contained an ink pad, while I was doing so. I drew my fingers and handprints on those cards. She then told me she would return. She reappeared about 30 minutes later, carrying a 9-inch by 14-inch box on a shoulder strap. When she opened the box, she discovered an Instamatic camera. Okay, I thought. They're putting together a badge for me. When that lady and her camera were ready, she photographed me from the front, right and left sides of my face, as well as the back of my head. I had to include my full name, as well as the date and time of the photographs. When I was finished, she stated that she'd be right back. She returned empty-handed about 30 minutes later. While standing in front of me, she said, "Andrew, if you discuss those matters of your visit to us with anyone else on the outside, you will not need to visit us. We will find and locate you. Again, we appreciate your visit to our office. Please follow me and I'll show you the way out." She opened the door for me to leave when we arrived at the front door. "Thank you and have a nice day," she said. I couldn't believe what had occurred. I never spoke to that exobiologist again. To avoid them needing to locate and find me because of my writings about unbelievable UFOs and their extraterrestrials, I turned the book-like writings into a screenplay, which a well-known and very busy feature film producer in Hollywood professionally rewrote into a script titled The Paradise Project. It is currently receiving funding for production. Even now, I have dreams about things happening before they happen. Story number 2. The real world is much more amazing and complex. Friday, August 17, 2018, 1700 hours and 20. I had been in and out of the hospital due to surgical complications and various bacterial and fungal infections. This time, it was severe bacterial pneumonia. In addition, I had a nephrostomy, bag from tubes sticking out of my kidney. I was generally sick. I felt even sicker than before. Breathing was difficult, and there was general pain throughout. I was physically and emotionally exhausted. I was finished. There was a sensation of falling asleep, but it was not the same as falling asleep. It was more of a sinking or a falling sensation. The sensation of motion shifted from downward to forward, and I felt myself being pressed against a sort of membrane. On the other side of the membrane, there was a diffused glow, and I could sense 3 beings. 2 were closer and to the right, and 1 was further away and to the left, but I had the impression that the one on the left was superior. I asked questions, but said nothing, and the answers came instantly. They weren't even words. They were more like understandings that came to me fully formed, as if I were recalling things I already knew. When I asked if this was the end, I was told it was. I was still aware of my surroundings and noticed my husband sitting to the side of my room with a friend who was conversing with each other. Being aware of him made me very nervous of him, and I expressed concern for my husband and daughter, afraid to leave them and concerned that they would be hurt. I was assured that they would be fine. I was almost angry at such a ridiculous promise, and I wondered if it meant they could guarantee nothing bad would happen to them. The response was complex and difficult to put into words. It was almost amusement, but a kind, gentle amusement. The closest I can come is to say that I was told, or shown, that of course all sorts of things would happen in their lives, but those lives, like all lives on the side, are very short, and not much that happens here matters much in the long run. They'd be on the other side before I could even think about it. What happens in this life is similar to watching a movie. You pay to see the show, which may be tragic, frightening, or filled with all sorts of things. But then the movie ends and you exit the theater and enter the real world. That was the most profound realization. The real world was on the other side of the membrane, and everything would be fine. I shouldn't be scared any more than I would be leaving a movie theater. Most importantly, the real world was far more wonderful, complex, and full of dimension than the movies I'd been watching my entire life. I gladly submitted. I've got it. I realized what you meant. I was prepared. Then I was shoved back with such a force that my teeth were rattling. I began crying, alerting my husband and the friend who were, in fact, sitting in the room together. I felt so duped. I'm still not sure why I wasn't allowed to go. For years after that, I would lie in bed hoping not to wake up. No matter how much I adored my husband, my daughter, my friends, and many other aspects of my life, none of it compared to the insight I'd received in that moment. I not only lost my fear of death, but I craved it. In the moments that followed, I had a number of what I can only describe as spiritual experiences. I had strong sensations to a larger reality at times, some of which included a sense of communication. Each occurrence left me shaken, but filled with an overwhelming sense of love and hope. Eventually, those experiences came to an end. My understanding took several years to fade. My recollection of it isn't as vivid or visceral as it once was. I have doubts about my experience now and then, but I remember knowing it was real at the time, so all I can do is trust the memory of the memory. But I've lost faith in death, and I'm now determined to fight for my life. I wish I had more faith in that memory. I wish I could have held on to the hope that death was not the final act. I feel as if I've misplaced something important. In fact, I'm certain that I have. Knowing something is far more comforting than hoping for it. I knew for a while.